information about.
Oh, was
Hey.
I supposed to do that? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No worries.
You shut it off. I mean, I had a note here.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thank you very much for joining us today in our webinar, second session of our webinar, Building a Water Resilient Future. So I'm just going to give another minute for people to join our webinar, and we will be back with you in a second. Thank you. Yes, I think we have people joining, so thank you very much again. My name is Carolina Montano Owen. I am the technical lead for sustainable buildings at the World Green Building Council, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today. We have opening remarks from Mississippi University, then we have a presentation from WSP, and then a panel discussion. So I invite you all to submit your question through our Q&A channel. So just to give a short introduction about ourselves, so the World Green Building Council is a network of over 75 green building councils around the world. We represent not only the green building councils, but also businesses, governments and organizations that are working towards the ambitious targets of the Paris Agreement and the UN SDGs. So today I want to give a special thanks to our Circularity Accelerator Steering Committee, which is formed by around 30 green building councils around the world, and our global partners, which made possible for us to have the webinar today, but also our latest publication on water. So just to give you a quick overview, there are many organizations that are calling are making a call today because freshwater crisis is one of the greatest humanitarian crises that we face today. So we have over a quarter of the population that are feeling this crisis, but also around 10% of the global greenhouse gas emissions are related to water use, storage, and distribution. So it is time for us not only to discuss about it, but also to have faster action, and that's why we are calling the sector today. So I invite you to take a look at our latest publication in these links. But today we want to hear from our experts, and I'm very proud to show our experts today. So we have Professor Dennis Truax, Professor and Director Emeritus of the School of Civil Environmental Engineering Department of the Mississippi State University. We have Martin Sieg, the National Market Leader for Energy and Sustainability from WSP. We have Dr. Marco Caffi, the Chief Operating Officer from Italian Green Building Council. And we have Tatiana Carreño, our Deputy Director for Technical Programs in the Colombian Green Building Council. And I think, unfortunately, we couldn't have Chris today. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I invite Martin. Oh, sorry, I invite Dennis to give our opening remarks. Over to you, Dennis.
Thank you, Carolina. If you'll allow me to frame the urgency of the conversation we're having today, there are a number of factors that we need to recognize as human beings on a somewhat limited planet. And it's hard when we think about where we are individually and the impact that we have. At the same time, we do have impact on the environment around us. Just within the past 2 weeks, data that's come forward emphasizes the role water plays, and at the same time emphasizes how we've neglected this essential resource. For example, due to overpumping of this resource, roughly 1/6 of all of the cities in China are sinking at the rate of about 1 centimeter a year. And I have seen this in other countries, mine as well, the United States as well. In fact, regionally, I have seen this, and alternative water supplies is typically what people have resorted to. This is not an option in most of these cases. So understanding the impact of how we live and what we do in the built environment and how the quality of life we expect has real impact on the water we use and the impacts that has. Recognize also that right now in Canada, there's a migration of sulfur-based petrochemical-linked contaminants moving throughout the crop environment in the subterranean environment. Where does it come from? How do we address it? What's the long-term impacts? Answer, they don't know yet. And these are questions we need to be asking. And then the other thing that I'll throw to you in this conversation is recognize, if I ask you, as I'm rhetorically about to do, if you think about how much water you consumed this morning for your breakfast, you're probably sitting there thinking, nah, I may have drank a quarter of a liter, half a liter, maybe a liter, that's not likely, but typically about a quarter of a liter to a third of a liter is what somebody would consume. Totally wrong. In the United States, in Great Britain, and throughout most of the world, the average breakfast results in the use of somewhere in the neighborhood of about 1,100 liters. That's 1,100 liters per day for one meal for one person. That's equivalent to the water consumed by over 500 people. And the same thing translates into buildings. It's not just the fact that we pour concrete or use steel or use renewable materials like timber or recycled plastics. It's the amount of water that's used in producing the raw materials and supporting the transport, delivery, construction, reclamation, maintenance, operation, and ultimate disposal, the recovery of those materials. And so we talk a lot these days, not enough, we talk a lot in the United States about life cycle cost analysis, and it invariably falls back to the dollar. And that's the wrong commodity. We need to be thinking about life cycle cost analysis in terms of carbon emission and in terms of the water demand that it has. And I'll give you one last example, and I'll turn it back to Carolina. When I first got into this business of environmental engineering, which is my focus, water resources, environmental engineering, I spent over 40 years in it, and literally closer to 50 years in it. But in my early years, I remember the design standards for sanitary landfills, or municipal solid waste landfills, as we now call them in the United States, was one in which we basically looked at having very porous soils so that we could function the landfills. We could get the material on. And a lot of times they turned into burn pits. Completely obvious. And in the late 80s, we started talking about the fact landfill design to get a true cost. Putting in liners to prevent groundwater contamination, putting in berms and containment systems and caps to address the greenhouse gas emission that comes from solid waste landfilling, land application of our municipal waste and industrial waste as well. And that significantly impacted the disposal costs. But when I say significantly, it was only in the context that we weren't paying the true cost. And when we started paying the true cost, it wasn't all that much, maybe 4 or 5 times much. So instead of paying $5 a ton for waste, I was paying $25 a ton for waste, 5 times. That wasn't insurmountable. That didn't stop the generation of solid waste. It didn't change our habits. It's certainly something we can do with relative ease, but we have to be cognizant of the fact. We have to be cognizant of the fact that water has an impact on our lives, and that water has an impact on the generation of greenhouse gases, which has an impact on our lives, which has an impact on the distribution of water on our planet. And we, individually and collectively, can have impact on both of those issues simply by being aware and being good stewards. Okay? Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Yes, you touched on several topics that we are calling for in our publication. I think there are astonishing figures around what we think that we use in terms of water, but what we actually use. But it's also a call for our sector to keep measuring, to start measuring if we are not doing. I think we have limited figures of what is happening at the construction phase, for instance. So yes, definitely thank you very much for that overview. And then I would like to hand over to Martin. Martin, over to you.
Thank you, Carolina. If you could just confirm that you can see my screen.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, thank you. So good morning or good afternoon, everyone. So I've been asked to take some time to sort of introduce the paper that the World Green Building Council has developed as part of their Circularity Accelerator. The paper is titled Building a Water Resilient Future for Everyone, Everywhere. And in the paper sets out sort of the challenges and the opportunities that exist for all of us in the built environment to try and address the issues, a lot of which Dennis has talked about, that relate to water in our built environment and how we can address those issues. So in the paper identifies 4 challenges to the global water crisis. Carolina spoke to these very quickly in the intro. Water scarcity is a very big concern for globally. About 40%, there's about a 40% gap between global demand and supply for water identified in 2023. This is leading to a lot of inequity issues and quality and access issues, highlighting the fact that about a quarter of the population don't have access to safe potable water. We've talked also about the carbon impact of water, so the energy consumed and the emissions resulting from the filtering, pumping, cleaning, desalination of water is a big issue to speak to, and associated to that as well is the embodied carbon impacts associated to all of those installations that are being built around the world. And last, it also brings in the notion of climate resilience, since 90% of the natural disasters that are being experienced around the globe from a climate perspective are related to water issues. So this is an issue that's affecting us all globally. Even, it's not just affecting the poorer, lesser developed countries. There are a lot of developed countries that are experiencing these issues. The United Kingdom, the Philippines, Canada, to a certain extent, the US. We see issues of climate impact to water and scarcity of water affecting those regions. And so it's important to address these issues, and that's why the World Green Building Council wanted to bring attention to these issues and challenges. Now, within the paper explores the embodied water demand and materials of our buildings. It explores the water consumption during the construction phase, the missed opportunities to encourage efficiency of water use at the building scale, and the inefficiencies in water provision at the city level. The intention behind this is to be an interactive exploration of the main water demands, pollution issues, resource management problems, and inefficiencies that exist in our urban landscape. The core principles of the paper is a call to consider the development of a circular economy, and the World Green Building Council is inviting all green building councils around the world, as well as experts and professionals in the industry, to engage and help to develop ways to address these issues that are affecting our built environment. So when we talk about a circular water economy, we're basically talking about foundational principles about the avoidance of waste and excess resource use, reuse of finite resources, regeneration of water sources, and reductions in demand. And this breaks out into 5 key principles, as shown on our slide here. So the top of the pyramid is the prevent. It's rethinking the products and services and eliminating ineffective actions, looking for opportunities to avoid the use of potable water altogether, encouraging use of non-potable water where and reserving the need of potable water where it really is fundamentally necessary. As Carolina touched on, measuring is an important part of this. We need to understand where and how our water is being used, and also look to that information to point us to where areas where we have losses and leakages that could be significantly impacting availability and capacity for water systems. The reduce side is seeking to drive continuous improvement through water use efficiency and better resource allocation and management. Reuse is pursuing any and all opportunities to reuse water within an operation and for external applications within the surrounding vicinity or community. This includes technologies such as gray water recycling, treated sewage, or effluent for non-potable needs in a building or other neighborhood scales, with an emphasis on keeping resources in circulation. And the last element is restore, where we're looking to efficiently and effectively return water to the watershed. This can include regeneration of water bodies, managed aquifer recharge, encouraging infiltration, or incorporating nature-based solutions into the built environment. The logic behind this is applied to all scales of the urban landscape, and every principle should be considered at every stage of an infrastructure development for supply chain use. Now, to help try and link these principles to some real-world applications, I've pulled a few examples of water-related projects that WSP has been involved of across the globe, and I'll try and draw some parallels between the work that we've been doing and the notion presented or the concepts presented here. So as a first example, the project I'd like to present is the Watershed Smart Building in Seattle, Washington. So this is a building that was designed and constructed as part of Seattle's Living Building pilot program. But what's notable here from a water perspective is the building was built with a large cantilever roof and sculptural gutter system to capture and carry rainwater, about 75,000 liters of it, to a cistern, helping to address 100% of the non-potable needs for the building. But in addition to this, an important fact about this project is on-site, there's also includes a bioretention planters and steel weirs that actually filter and treat up to 1.5 million liters of toxic runoff from the adjacent Aurora Bridge. The effects of this help to reduce the pollution in Lake Union, which is one of Seattle's major lakes. So this project highlights how, in addition to being able to address water needs for the building itself, it is possible to have collaboration with community and neighborhood where private sector projects can contribute to addressing major issues that are affecting the surrounding community. Another initiative that our teams are working on, and this is being led by our teams out of New Zealand, is the notion of sponge cities. And our WSP is working on this in collaboration with the Helen Clark Foundation. And they're looking at the idea or the notion and concept of sponge cities as a response to resiliency to intensifying rainfall and helping to reduce risks to our cities and urban areas. Now, the initiative is inspired by work that started in China, where landscape architects and researchers there were looking at solutions to be able to address their water management issues. Oops. So this brings about the question of what are sponge cities? Well, sponge cities are a concept where rather than working with water rather than working against it, looking for opportunities to encourage absorbing, storing, and slowly releasing of stormwater into the environment. Sponge cities value water as a resource, shifting away from the conventional engineering approach of stormwater as a nuisance or a waste that needs to be captured and conveyed as quickly as possible away through pipes buried underneath our cities. They incorporate blue-green infrastructure, reducing impervious surfaces, enhancing green space to promote greater infiltration, and integrating natural bodies of water like rivers, ponds, and wetlands to better manage stormwater. Now, sponge cities are not a unique concept. They're informed or similar to approaches used by Indigenous communities worldwide, and concepts also promoted by sustainability and nature-based water management principles. So many of us may be familiar with parts of these, but sponge cities really try to bring a lot of those notions and reinforce those notions. There are also key benefits for biodiversity and human well-being, as well as being demonstrated to be less costly and more effective than the conventional gray infrastructure that we are commonly used to in our cities. And they also bring the added benefit of lowering embodied carbon as well as helping to sequester carbon. A study by the Global Commission on Adaptation found that return on investments from early investments in adaptation, such as sponge cities, can have a return as much as 10 to 1 within the first 10 years of implementing these adaptation projects. Another area that I thought I would talk about is desalination projects. So this is an area of specialization for WSP. We do desalination projects pretty much around the globe and on every continent. But as climate resilient sources of water are becoming increasingly an important future aspect for community and supply and availability of drinking water, we're seeing that our clients are being more focused on sustainability and climate as they're working on their projects. And within that, we're seeing a lot more discussion happening around water security, climate resilience, energy efficiency, operational embodied carbon emissions from these projects. How do we design and build for greater longevity and durability? And how do we actually factor in that whole life cycle impacts, talking about the environmental waste, operational maintenance, and other aspects of the life cycle. And as Dennis sort of suggested, not just focusing on the upfront costs. Now, while I could talk a lot about different projects that we've done in these various subjects, the part that I wanted to actually speak to today was efforts that are being done by our teams in Australia, and most specifically to the notion of the circular water economy. So currently, right now, on a project that the team is working on, they are looking at circularity principles and how not only in the construction, but in the operation of this desalination plant, we can try to integrate circular economy concepts and bring that, close that loop on the entire process. So following a simple process related around, at a first phase, designing out waste, at a second stage, keeping materials in use, and then at a third stage, returning materials back to the system, the team have basically broken out the project into five, 6 categories, looking at the site, the skin of the project, the structure, the services, the interior finishes and fittings. And then they look at different strategies throughout the different stages of the project and have been identifying opportunities to be able to encourage circular economy and close the loop on consumption and materials on the site, considering things like prefabricated elements, design for flexibility, looking at take-back schemes for a lot of the consumables that occur in desalination plants, and then also looking at ease of maintenance, as this has a long-term impact over the overall scale of the project. So that's a quick overview of the paper, a quick overview of some of the initiatives that WSP is doing in this area. At this point, I will turn it back to Carolina and to the panel, but I do encourage people to reach out to visit the World Green Building Council's website and to download a copy of the paper and to become more immersed in the issues and the opportunities that we have in front of us.
Thank you very much, Martin. I think it's very inspiring to see that there are holistic projects that are bringing together the circularity in water projects, but also in terms of materials, which is something that we need now and we need to scale. We need scalable solutions. So thank you very much for that overview. And yes, thank you all for participating. And I'd like to bring into the conversation Marco Caffi, because Marco, you have also working with us in this paper, but you also have a paper from Italia Green Building Council, which I want to highlight because it is a unique paper that you brought together different sectors. So you brought together the academia, but also the private and the public sector. So yes, can you give us an overview of how you did it? What are the main outcomes? Over to you.
Yeah, I can share my screen because presenting some particular aspect of our paper. I think that could be very interesting for the attendant to understand what happened in Italy about the water efficiency and the water
Yes.
scarcity in some case. Okay, I try to share my screen now. Okay, I think that now in a few seconds could work. Okay, right. The situation in Italy is that for building, the water that is pumped and distributed to the building in Italy, about the 50% of this water is lost because we have a not very efficiency network in our cities. And at the same time, year by year, we are losing our reserve of potable water. You can see here the picture of our glacier on Alps, and that's very. And what we are looking in the last years is that the drought phenomena are increasing. And for example, in 2017 in Italy, we had a drought that make a damage of about 2 billion of euros of our economy and agriculture. And because the level of the water in the lake close to Rome, Lago di Bracciano, that is a lake that serves a part of the public potable water network of our capital. The level was very low because the drought. In 100 neighborhoods of Rome, the water was rationed. And for 8 hours every night, a lot of building in Rome was without water. So you can consider that people that live in this building, they can't use the water during the night. So they can go to the toilet, for example. And what are happening at the beginning of this year? At the beginning of this year, we have this situation. So you can see the picture of Europe. Martin before explained the situation in the world. In Europe, you can see that in the countries that are close to the Mediterranean Sea, we are close to the sea, but we have a very strong problem with the water. And Italy, especially, is all the countries colored. So the stress generated by drought is very important in our country. You can see Sicily, a big island in the south part of Italy, that at the beginning of the year, in March 2024, you can see the picture is more brown than in the same period of the 2023. And because of this low rain and low water availability, since the 1st of March of this year, about 1 million of people in Sicily has the water rationed. And in about 150 municipalities, the provision of water was reduced by 10 to 45%. So we have this situation in Italy. So also in a rich country like Italy, the scarcity of water could be a problem. It's not a problem also for some poor country in the world. And it means that if you don't have water in the building, for sure you have also an unhealthy building, because you can't have water for maintain health your toilet. And for this reason, we think that we must start a campaign in Italy, a strong campaign, to renovate the water and sanitary system in buildings. And we have a great opportunity, because in the next year in Italy, in all part of Europe, I think maybe in a great part of the world, we will have to renovate a huge number of existing buildings to improve their energy efficiency. So we can put together the energy efficiency and the water efficiency in order to transform also the building, not from the energy side, but also from the water side, from a simple system that use only potable water, and the wastewater is put it in the only one municipality system that collect the wastewater, but in a more complex water, but more efficiency. Is it possible right now? We have some experience, okay, it's not an experience great and big like Martin showed us before in terms of experience in building or in cities or in infrastructure, but also in a small residential building. This is a case of a building that is certified with our rating system GBC Home, where in a deep renovation activities, they put also the water efficiency in the project, they install a tank for rainwater, they install the dual water network for toilet, and you can see the dual network that could be a problem in a renovation if you put together the water efficiency renovation and the energy efficiency renovation. Then the pipe that is being installed on the external face of the existing wall now is covered by the insulation. So it's possible improve the water efficiency. In this case, they save now 45% of the water needed for the irrigation and more than 50% of the water needed for the toilets. So for this reason, because also in Italy we have a problem with the water scarcity, water efficiency, because we have a vision that we share with the bigger community of the World Green Building Council and with our community in Italy, and we work with this our community to produce a paper that could help all the Italian market in terms of the market, the economical market, but also the other operator like the public administration, to take in mind the water efficiency problem. And the power of our work, you can see here also the link where you can download the paper, and obviously it's in Italian, I'm sorry, but maybe with Google Translator and other tools now it's easy to translate in English and other language. The power of this work is that it's science-based. The work was coordinated by two professors. One, the main coordinator was Marco Maglionico, professor from University of Bologna, and the second professor is Francesco Fatone from University Politecnica delle Marche. And inside our paper, we have also 58 scientific quotes. It's also built with the entire supply chain. We engage the real estate developers, designer, producer of material and water system, public utilities, and they help us to write this paper. And another important thing is that the paper is connected to the wide international position. This paper is also put inside the World Green Building Council paper, Building the Water Resilience. And this is three elements that make very powerful this work that is allowing us a lot of things. The more area reported, for sure demonstrate the importance of water efficiency in our rating systems that are like other systems, a way to guide the market to make more sustainable a building. Support for sure solution and technical proposal of innovators that when they propose something new or something more efficient in terms of water use, they can support their proposal with this document and say, this is the way and the reason why I propose you something new or something more advanced. And the last thing that is very important for us is that this document, also because it's connected with the international document, like the document that Martin presented before me, is that this document is supporting our advocacy action in different ways. We are at the table of the Ministry of Environment in Italy. We are discussing the new version of the Green Public Procurement Regulation for buildings in Italy, and all our proposals about a more efficient system, water system inside this regulation are taken into consideration. Why? Because we are proposing this supported by a paper that is science-based, participate and share with all the supply chain. And then we are introducing, and we also in this paper, we propose this, a water efficiency indicator for the building, like for energy efficiency, and in terms of finance supporting the activation of blue certificates to certify that a certain reduction of water consumption has been attained, like for example what happened with the white certificate for energy efficiency. So that's the reason why we start work and develop this first document in Italy that are very helpful for us. And the reason is because we know that we have a problem and we want to support in an effective way the policymakers and the technical people to take into account the problem and try to give some solution. And I hope that my speech helped to understand better what happened in Italy and could be useful also for some other countries.
Thank you, Marco. That was a great overview, and thank you, yeah, for supporting us and also, yes, bring all the sectors together. So I'd like to bring now Tatiana. Tatiana, thank you for being here with us today. And yes, I'd like to come to you because you also have a unique perspective. You are working in Colombia. Colombia has different challenges. We have different climates. We have different socioeconomic situation, but also we have different phenomena that the world doesn't have, like El Niño and La Niña. So I want to hear about your perspective. How is Colombia doing in terms of water management? And yes, how you are connecting the sectors as well.
Thank you, Carolina, and hi, everybody. Yes, actually, we do have like interesting facts. So I'm going to share some of these facts with you. So according to the Global Water Partnership, Colombia is among the 10 countries with the greatest water resources on the planet. We have mountains, we have wetlands, we have important rivers. So that means that we have a huge responsibility in its conservation, not just for us. And for consumption, according to the National Water Study, in Colombia, the economic sectors with the greatest participation in the use of water are agriculture with 43%, and energy with 25%. So, and also if we add the different sectors that are associated with construction, there's a 10% of water consumption. I'm not an expert on agriculture, so I'm going to talk more about energy and construction. So about energy, although we have started the transition to diversify our energy resources and ensure a reliable energy supply by promoting wind, solar, and geo, we are not there yet. Our energy comes mainly from hydropower. So when we talk about water prices, we should talk about also energy prices. And for construction, in addition to demanding water resources for building operation, there's another impact at the urbanization level with increase of impermeable areas, which generates a reduction in infiltration and increase of runoff. So Colombia is a highly vulnerable country to climate change. For example, when there is no rain, we have an impact on our water reservoirs. Agriculture needs to consume more water, and we face a shortage of water supply, but also on energy supply. And when we have the opposite, a lot of rain, we have floods, landslides, infrastructure that is not able to resist all the runoff. So there are two opposite phenomena that are happening more frequently, and we need to adapt. We need to be more resilient to these climate changes. We are now reacting to these conditions, but we are not prepared.
Thank you, Tatiana. Yes, I think one of the key messages today is that we are bringing together the crisis of energy and water in Colombia is one of the countries that are showing how important this is. And yes, later today or earlier today in our first session, we have also the cases from Uganda and India. So we are seeing that actually the countries with the highest resources are the ones that are suffering the crisis the most. So Dennis, if I may come back to you, there was also a very interesting paper that you published a few months ago about the innovative solutions for the Navajo community. And I'd like to ask you about that because it's different when we are in the desert. So can you please tell us what are these innovative solutions and how is that working?
Gladly. And what that was actually a culmination of work being done by the Navajo Nation as well as some local consulting firms. And so for the sake of giving you a little bit of background or color, if you will, the reservation is basically part of a desert, and the water resources available to the individuals that live there are by and large non-existent. Over 60% of the individuals that live within that community have no water. Now, take a deep breath when I say that. I literally mean no water. And the question then becomes, well, how do they live? Well, like the other 40+% of our population on the planet, they have to go long distances individually to collect what water they can find from other resources and then bring it home. And this impacts quality of life, impacts economics, it impacts human health, in that the water that's brought back is usually the closest water, not necessarily the safest water to drink. And so this is a situation has too long gone on, not weeks, months, years, but decades. And so what's happening now is a recognition that first, they can't mine a water supply. It's not a matter of drilling down and finding a well. It doesn't exist. And there is no substantial rainfall or other moisture collection alternatives that will support the community individually or collectively. And so what's happened now is the community's gotten together with the support of some engineering firms and some nonprofits, and to put together a program where they're actually installing, and I promise you're gonna think I'm lying to you, but I'm not. They're installing for the first time a sink in the house, a toilet in the house, a shower in the house. And what's happening is these individuals are being hooked up to a storage tank. These storage tanks are buried outside, buried and effective to mitigate the opportunities for the water to freeze during the extreme winters that they live with, or evaporate as a result of solar radiation. And these tanks hold this water that is brought in by truck and filled. This is analogous to what many places had back in 100 years ago in the US, where you had a cistern, which collected rainwater and people drank the water that came there. They augmented that with trucked in water. In fact, I grew up in an area where that was actually a very common practice in the Appalachians of the United States, West Virginia, Western Maryland, Western Pennsylvania. And that was the environment I grew up in. So it's very consistent with that mindset. But again, it is a solution, but in some ways it's a stopgap. It's a solution in the sense that these people now have potable water, which they use very sparingly, human consumption, collection. They have gray water options that then come in that are used in ways for like toilets. Most of the toilets are actually composting toilets, as opposed to flush toilets, which is kind of the standard in the US. And as a result, their quality of life is better because of the amount of water that's brought in, somewhere in the neighborhood of about, quick math, 5,000 liters, 1,200 gallons. So somewhere in the neighborhood of about 5,000 liters is brought in. And obviously, going back to my earlier analogy, as long as they don't live and cook excessively and squander the water, it's an option. It is a solution that is being looked at in other parts. I'll give you a second example. There's a community in West Texas that has completely exhausted its water supply. And as a result, they effectively have two choices. One, close the community up and let it become a ghost town and move away, or find an alternative way of augmenting the water supply, and they have elected to do the latter. What they're doing right now is, in fact, they're just about to finish the process of having to truck water in at 20,000 gallons a load, which is about as much as they can bring on the transportation system that's available to them. Anything over that, and they'll destroy the transportation system. But they're bringing loads of water in there, about 20,000 gallons at a time, to support this community. And eventually they will have, very shortly, they will have in place what you might call an aqueduct. I just call it a force main, where they're going to be pumping water from a community that's about 25 kilometers away. And they will be reliant upon that community, beholden to that community, dependent upon that community for the rest of the existence of that community that they live in, to provide water that way. I have lived in and worked in communities where this was the way that went on. But then when water gets tight in the community that's actually supplying it, it's the first people to go are the people that don't live in the community and aren't necessarily paying the taxes. So it's a precarious way to live. In fact, when I was working in Turkey, the conversation was much the same. There were the discrepancies, the inequities between the Asian and Euro side of the Bosphorus. And the fact that the majority of the water was on one side, and the majority of the people were on the other side. But it wasn't within the country, it was the adjacent countries looking at the resources that were available and saying, they have, we don't. So this has to become a collaborative solution. Something I mentioned in another meeting, and I'll share with this group as well. It was mentioned in passing at least, and that is that water really does impact security. In fact, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has defined water scarcity as the most significant impact, or having the most significant impact on security, national security.
Yeah.
Because while we can argue about who has what resource at point A and point B, when it comes down to survival, and I don't have water and you do, and I see an opportunity to take it from you, we have a problem. And that's certainly not a situation we want to get to on this planet. So in that conversation, what they're doing on the reservation is an opportunity for a fix, but whether it's a solution, one could argue.
Thank you, Dennis. Yes, thank you for bringing that up, because that's why many organizations today are saying that water crisis is our biggest crisis coming up. And thank you for the latest point you made as well. And that gives me an opportunity to bring the question from the audience. And I'm going to open that to the complete panel. So we have seen there are a lot of discrepancies in terms of water use, but also awareness of that water usage around the world. So the question is, how can we raise awareness in terms of the amount of water that we use as people, and also in the sector? So yes, open to you.
Why don't you let Martin or Marco go next?
Right. Yeah, it's not easy, because
It's not easy.
I think that a lot of people, the expert and the users of water, so the professional fields, the constructor and the users, the end users, approach the way to do their job or to use the water in the same way. We have always done in this way. So we have, in general, designed the building in this way, and in general, we use the water in this way. That means that it's very easy open a tap and use the water without take care, because it costs no energy. My grandmother, when she needed some water, she must came to outside the house, and with the air end pump from a well the water. So it take it in account that water means energy, is a very important resource, and he used only the water that he needed. That's the first point. In this moment, the users, the general users, don't have this feeling. And so we have to push maybe more dissemination activities to understand from the beginning, from the school, the first years of the school, and also in the adults, to understand this. And in the other side, the same problem is for example, for professional fields or operator, technical operator, that for the effort in this case is too much to change the way they in general design or make a building. And so we have to break this approach to maintain this comfort zone. Yeah, we have a lot of to do from my point of view in terms of cultural action. So educational courses for experts and dissemination for people, and that's for sure what we have to do. And just to give you another thing, I'm in Brescia where I live at the moment. I'm also a promoter of a scientific park about sustainability, and we have about, is not a big town, my cities, we have about more than 35,000 attended to our exposition. One is about water, and when come in this our science park, people, young students, when they go back to the house, they bring their parents and say, okay, you have to come to me to understand better what happened in terms to water efficiency, water consume, sustainability. And it's for this reason that cultural action is, from my point of view, one of the more important things to do.
Thank you, Marco. I think, Tatiana, you wanted to, yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to share like a short story that happened like recently. We are right now in Bogota in a shortage program where we have person every 9 days we don't have water for 24 hours. So that started only a couple of weeks ago. So what happened on the third day of the program is that the city reported the highest water consumption. So that makes no sense, right? What we see here and with your question is that we need to engage people. We need to involve them, to give them the tools to educate them, because what happened if you say to someone, you will not have water on Monday, so on Sunday, I will collect a lot of potable water. And on Tuesday, when we have the water supply again, so maybe that will be thrown away. So we had, well, that's a funny story, but it's ironic, right? What we do at Colombia GBC, so we work to develop capacities for every actor of the value chain. We have resources, trainings, events, guides that would help people make decisions. We recently launched the LEAD business case for Latin America, where we talk about what LEAD projects are doing in Latin America, and that includes what are we doing with water. We are collecting rainwater, we are treating rainwater for non-potable uses. We also launched the Sustainable and Circular Water Management Guide in Buildings. So that could be another resource that projects that are not pursuing certification can use, because there's a lot that we can do to reduce the demand of water. And also we will launch next month our Casa Existente guide. That is a guide for existing housing projects in Colombia, where you can implement some strategies to improve the sustainability of your home, including water efficiency measures, because most people don't know how much the shower is consuming. So hopefully all these resources help users make decisions and change some habits as well. So what we need to do is try to get the message to every actor, but very important to engage the final users.
Thank you, Tatiana. That's definitely incredible. Thanks for sharing that story with us. Yes, we definitely need to engage more and make people aware of the water consumption. Martin, if I can come to you, you show very innovative and great holistic projects. And I think our audience is also wondering how we can make those solutions scalable. And I wanted to ask you, what's your experience in engaging different stakeholders? And I think one of the issues we have raised as well is the cost of such solutions. So how do you engage with people showing that these are cost-efficient projects?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it is part of sort of the core issue about trying to bring attention to water and bring attention to water solutions is that for most people, water is something they take for granted. Certainly in the more developed portions of the world where we simply have to turn a tap and we have access to clean water, abundancy and ease of access becomes a critical issue. Critical issue in the context of how people view water and see whether they consider it something that's at risk or not. And so, as the other speakers have mentioned, I think there's a huge amount of education that needs to be brought to raise awareness to people of the challenges with water and how valuable a resource it is. So when we look at the cost of projects, that, you know, the general tendency we've developed engineering practices or approaches to deal with water, for cleaning our water, for conveying our water, and so on and so forth. And a lot of that has been driven by trying to find the most cost-effective solution to be able to do that historically. But as we're seeing more and more failure of those systems, or more and more inadequacy of those systems to actually deliver healthy, safe water to everybody, there's being some re-questioning of that. There's also been re-questioning of the approaches that are being followed. And when we take the time to actually look at that and consider other alternatives, what we're ending up to realize is there are more cost-effective ways to be able to do this. The challenge, however, is because in most jurisdictions, the price that people pay for water is not really representative of what it costs to actually bring them that water, then it becomes very challenging to try and say we need to invest more in the infrastructure related to that resource. So that's often one of the challenges that we face that are there. But that's improving. Life cycle cost analysis is helping us to demonstrate those. The attention and focus on sustainability, and now the attention and focus on carbon is giving us more tools to be able to empower that discussion and to be able to bring more attention to newer, innovative ways to be able to address. And I think fundamentally, one of the big things around water is we need to really start to look at where do we need potable water and where do we not need potable water, and understand that potable water is really fundamentally needed to keep human beings alive and to keep us, we need to value and cherish that for that function, and realize that when it comes to, mixing cement for our buildings or washing our cars or irrigating our lawns, those applications don't need potable water. And we need to be able to build an infrastructure that is capable of separating the two so that we aren't overspending on filtering and cleaning and processing water for applications that don't require that high level of potable water usage. So.
Thank you very much, Martin. Yes, and I think you touched already on one of the other questions we had about price. So yes, I think we can talk about this for hours, but we don't have that much time. Thank you all very much for bringing different perspectives. And yes, I invite everybody to go and visit our website so you can see all these different papers. But yes, we are not done yet. Dennis, over to you.
Carolina,
Yes.
not mentioned at this point, but I'm going to mention it. I'm past president of the American Society of Civil Engineers. ASCE is the way we talk about it, because we're actually a global organization, 177 countries on this planet, and we're trying to establish an outpost on the moon. Just kidding. I want to leave as we conclude. I'm going to, because of the circularity of the conversation we have, I'd like to invite you, the attendees, the panelists, to visit one of our websites, and it's simply said, just simply entitled futureworldvision.org. No dots, no anything else. Well, .org, but Future World Vision. We just launched in February our Future Cities IMAX movie, and it targets this conversation. It's something ASCE has been talking about for over a decade, having brought subject area experts in from around the world to talk about tomorrow, recognizing that our planet is urbanizing. 85% of the population is going to be living in an urban environment, not because the water resources or energy resources or food resources are in urban environments, just the opposite, in fact. But planning for, recognizing, addressing, and getting a perspective, and we put that out there to help with. And I suggested to the audience and to the panelists, and of course to all of us, to look at this, to start that conversation and look how, whether it be at the layer of transportation or environmental sustainability or resource management or economics, that this is all the different layers we have to talk about. And when somebody opens a tap to brush their teeth in the morning, what I would love for them to recognize, as opposed to standing in the mirror and watching the water run in the sink, is that there's a natural resource going down to the drain that impacts carbon, impacts energy, impacts water supply, impacts human health. And if they understood that, there's a good chance they'd turn the water off and only turn it on when they needed to rinse the brush or whatever. So anyway, I just wanted to, I really needed to share that with you, because I am personally, and our organization collectively is quite proud of both the website, the documentation we've put out there. We have universities using programs to try and do exactly what the panelists have talked about, educating the next generation of engineers, the next generation of problem solvers, to help get on top of this and be impactful. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Yeah, I will take you on that invitation. And I would like to hand over to Martin for those final remarks.
Thank you, Carolina, and thanks to the other panelists. And I think I want to thank the attendees to today's call. So I hope today's call has been informative, that you've taken away some valuable insights, and that you're gonna, if you're not already involved, you're going to become involved in championing and becoming a steward of water. As I mentioned earlier, I think we all take water, particularly in the developed world, we take water for granted. It's just too easy for us to access it, be either by turning a tap or going to the store and buying a bottle of water. And I really think that the value of water is under recognized. Of all the resources that we have on the planet, I don't know how many people see water as being the most important resource, and realize that, of all the resources we have, we cannot live without water. So not to put a gray cloud on the conversation, but I think it's important that we recognize that water is an incredibly valuable resource, probably the most valuable resource we have, and that we collectively have to work to try and find better solutions as to how the relationship that we have with water and how we use and consume water on a daily basis. So I'm going to wish everybody a good day. I hope they got a lot of value out of today's presentation, and I certainly encourage you to have a look at the World Green Building Council's paper and the other papers that were talked about today, and become part of the conversation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, and have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, bye.